Another nail in my coffin! Ciao a tutti, sono il vostro amichevole zio P. De Quacere. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. This is my series, Nails in a Coffin, where we learn that with great kills, there must also come great nails. If you are new to my channel, you can read what Nails in a Coffin is all about in the section down below, because these videos really aren't film reviews, rather a breakdown of the kills and evaluate how well the victim responds to their attack. So I'm continuing my venture with some giallo films. So far I've covered A Blade in the Dark, Deep Red, A Bay of Blood, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, Stage Fright, and Don't Torture a Duckling. Here's a look at those films' average nails in a coffin, and I'll put some cards up here for you to check out those videos. This week I'm covering The Case of the Bloody Iris, released in 1972, directed by Giuliano Carmignato. If you are unfamiliar with this movie, the plot revolves around a series of murders that occur in an apartment building. A beautiful model played by Edwidge Fenech, she's at the center of this investigation, and as the body count rises, the film delves into like webs of secrets, deception, suspense that's really typical of the giallo genre. So, rilassetevi e distendetevi as we get The Case of the Bloody Iris, some nails in a coffin. Our first kill happens just 5 minutes into the film. We have Luna, a prostitute who enters this high-rise apartment building for an appointment. She's among the initial people to board an elevator, which quickly becomes crowded, and this positions Luna towards the rear of the lift. And the elevator has this awkward silence. Everybody just pretty much keeping to themselves. When the elevator gets to the 13th floor, all but Luna and a stranger in a black trench coat with gloves on remain. He takes a rag out of his pocket, places it over Luna's mouth, and the doors close. He then takes a knife out of his pocket, stabs Luna in the stomach a few times, and then he finishes her off with a throat slash. An early kill in this giallo, and we're going to give Luna 1.5 nails in a coffin. The killer got very close to her when there was room in the elevator. She never moved, and when he placed his hand over her mouth with the rag, she put both hands up by his hand, and it didn't look like she was pulling too hard to remove his hand. I can only assume if the rag was soaked in chloroform or not. And, you know, when she was stabbed, she never used her arm. She didn't push him away or even struggle. And this could have been because of the chloroform, but I really don't know for sure. So the best I can do here is give her 1.5 nails in the coffin. We next meet casino stripper Mizar Harrington. She lives on the 20th floor of this apartment building with Professor Isaacs and a Mrs. Moss. They have some idle chit-chat while waiting for the elevator. And when the door opens, the professor, being a gentleman, lets the young lady in first, but she enters the elevator cab and she screams when she finds Luna's body. After her photo shoot, the stunning Jennifer, played by Edwidge Fenech, is walking home. She spots a white iris flower on the ground, and this seems to trouble the young model. And she's nervous, looking around the area, and she continues her walk home. She's stopped by someone from her past that wants to talk to her. It's Adam, the leader of a sex cult called Iris that Jennifer was part of before she escaped the modeling. He wants her back, but she's past all that and wants nothing to do with him or Iris anymore. She elbows him in the ribs, and she's able to run away. After returning home from work, the lovely Mazar waits for the elevator in her building. When the doors open, she steps into the cab, but stops suddenly, having a flashback to when she found Luna's body earlier in the day. The stress of it is all too much for her, so she decides to take the stairs, and she starts to walk up to her apartment. She's nervously running up the stairs, which makes sense since she was a woman alone in the same area where another woman was murdered. And she's relieved when she gets to a door, and she's able to get inside her apartment where she thinks she's safe and sound. When Mazar gets inside, she goes to turn the lights on, but the power's off in her apartment. She goes to open the front door to let some light in, and when she's checking to see if a lamp works, the door slams shut. She goes to the kitchen and lights a match to give herself some temporary light in her apartment. She does a quick scan. Then she lights the burner on the stove to give herself a less temporary light source. She walks out of the kitchen looking for her intruder, but out of nowhere she gets like a judo chop to the side of her neck, which knocks her out. She wakes up bound in a tub where she can't move, and the water is slowly rising as the killer watches. She's begging for her life, but the killer is just standing there as the water covers her head and she drowns to death. Mazar earned herself 1.5 nails in a coffin. It was smart of her when she lit the match to see and then lit the stove on the burner. But I do feel like she made some mistakes here. She knew someone was in her apartment, but she never grabbed a weapon. She was in the kitchen, so I'm sure there were knives or something in there. When she walked out of the kitchen, she was only looking directly in front of her and not to her surroundings. I think she should have ran for the front door. But after she was knocked out, there was nothing that she could do, and it must have been a horrible way to die for her. But I think she could have survived this a little better or put up a little bit better of a fight if she did things a little bit differently, which is why I'm only going to give her 1.5. A little bit later on in the film, Jennifer was in her apartment and she was actually assaulted by the killer. She was able to get away from him, seeking refuge in her neighbor's apartment, Sheila. While Sheila is trying to comfort Jennifer, Sheila's dad returns home. He walks directly to his room, walking right past the two women, and he never utters a word, even after Sheila greets him. Sheila, she takes Jennifer back to her apartment and wants to see if the intruder is still there. There's no one else in the apartment, and Sheila tells Jennifer to go lay down while she calls the police. Marilyn then returns home. She's Jennifer's roommate. She finds a bloody iris on the floor, and then Jennifer sees blood on the door by the closet, and she rushes to go check. When she opens the door, she's horrified to see that Adam is dead from a stab wound to the abdomen. He was killed off screen, so I can't give him a nail rating. Our next kill, Marilyn. She's walking through the city carrying multiple boxes from a shopping trip, unaware that the killer is watching her. He approaches the young woman. She says hi to him. He then plunges the blade right into her stomach, and then he disappears into the crowded street. She's stumbling across the sidewalk, no one noticing her struggle. Then she falls into Andrea's arms, who just so happen to be on the street. She tries to get words out, but she can't, and then she falls to the ground, dying from her injury. Marilyn earned herself 2 nails in a coffin. When this killer approached her on the sidewalk, Marilyn said hi, signifying that she knew this person, so there was no danger. That's why she had no inclination what was going to happen. Her arms were full, and there wasn't much she could have done. I was more appalled at everybody walking around being oblivious to her predicament, which unfortunately isn't probably too far from reality nowadays. She tries to get words out when she fell into Andrea, but she was unable to do so. I just didn't see any foolish decisions here on her. She knew the killer and was tricked. So I think she deserves at least 2 nails in the coffin. Andrea is sickened at the sight of blood, and everybody on the street is now pointing at him, thinking he killed Marilyn. He's covered in her blood, and he panics and takes off running. This makes him a suspect, but he's able to avoid any capture by the police at this time. For now, Jennifer believes Andrea is innocent. She gets a phone call from him asking her to meet him, but not in her apartment. They set up to meet at night in a junkyard. Now, Jennifer's nervously walking through the junkyard, calling out for Andrea. She thinks she's alone, but he's about to go to her, but he's scared off by the police, which are following Jennifer. After this failed rendezvous, Jennifer runs into Sheila out on the street, and they walk home together. They enter the elevator, but Morgley takes the women down to the basement. They're both scared, and of course the power is going to go out, which really doesn't help their situation. When the doors open, the 2 women exit the elevator, and they start exploring the area, looking for a way back out. They split up just for a moment, with Sheila going out ahead of Jennifer. Now, she's walking past all these boilers, and out of nowhere, she gets blasted in the face with steam, which was a trap by the killer, and Sheila was not his intended target. And after a few moments, Sheila does collapse after an agonizing death. Sheila, I'm going to award her 2 nails in a coffin. She was caught in a trap that was made for somebody else, and she never saw this coming. I don't think anybody would predict something like this happening. And she really wasn't being careless or foolish. She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, I've never been blasted in the face with hot steam before, so I don't know covering up, trying to run away, what was going through her, how fast it would kill somebody. So I think being in the wrong place at the wrong time, I didn't see her making anything, outlandishly foolish. I still think she deserves 2 nails in a coffin. After Sheila dies, the power goes out, and Jennifer knows the killer is close, and she hurries to find an exit. She takes off running again, falling to the floor a few times because she's so scared. She stops with some pipes to catch her breath, but has to keep moving since someone is close behind her. The person that was behind Jennifer with the flashlight shows up. It's Andrea. Jennifer is not sure if she can really trust him, so in an effort to prove his innocence, he tells her to go on, that he won't stop her. She goes to a staircase where she can, get the duck out of Fodge right now. But before she leaves, the police show up, and Andrea runs away before they can capture him. Jennifer is now kind of convinced that Andrea is the killer. With everything going on, Jennifer, she decides to leave town for good. While she's brushing her hair in her apartment, the killer quietly enters and attacks her. She's trying to fight him off, trying to shut the door. She's actually able to get out of her apartment, and she goes to her neighbor's apartment, Professor Isaacs, Sheila's father. Jennifer knows that he's home since you can hear volume music playing, and everybody knows that the professor always practiced his musical instrument. Jennifer rushes into the professor's apartment, calling out to him for help. She finds David's body in the chair with the dark yellow gloves on. While she's trying to process everything, she sees that the music she actually heard was actually a tape recording of the professor practicing. This really confuses and scares her. She runs to the front door, but someone's on the other side unlocking, about to open it. The door opens, and it's the mysterious killer. He enters the room, removes his hat and mask, and it is Professor Isaacs. After the professor tells Jennifer that he killed all these women, blaming him for his daughter being a lesbian. Dumb. He attacks her with the chloroform soaked rag and knocks her unconscious, and with her slumping to the floor next to Dave's body. The professor carries Dave's body to the stairwell and tosses him over the banister, and he has the same plans for Jennifer, and he carries Jennifer to the stairwell next. Before the professor can give Jennifer her send-off, the elevator doors open, and it's on Andrea. He rushes out and saves Jennifer's fate. Andrea and the professor fight back and forth, both hanging over the edge of the banister at times. The professor grabs his blade and he's trying to stab into Andrea, but eventually Andrea gets the upper hand. He's able to toss the professor over the railing, and he falls all the way down to his death. Our final set of nails are the professor's, and he earned himself 1.5 nails in a coffin. He did well enough fighting Andrea. You know, he held up his own, but I think his fatal flaw was when he went to stab Andrea with an overhand grip, bringing it down. Especially when he's off balance, hanging over a railing. I think there was a much better way he could have tried to stab Andrea. Just like I said before, the ego is often a downfall of villains, and when you come with an overhand stab like that, I think it's kind of an ego thing with some of these villains, and that was the professor. But he did put up a good fight against a younger opponent, so taking everything into consideration, I believe that 1.5 nails in a coffin is fair for this violinist.
Violins. Violins are bad. That screechy music's gonna ruin the goddamn country.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Those are all my nails in a coffin for the case of the Bloody Iris. Here's a summary of all the nails I've awarded. The average nails in a coffin for this film is 1.7 nails, which is a little high, I believe, but there were only a few kills here, with none of the victims receiving less than 1.5 nails in a coffin. Here's the average nails in a coffin for all the giallo movies I've covered so far. A Bay of Blood still leading the pack with the highest average with a very good 1.92 nails in a coffin. And Stage Fright bringing up the rear with a low 1.25 nails. I like this movie. You can never go wrong with Edwidge Fenech. She is simply stunning. I loved all the performances from all the women in this film. They were all excellent. Very, very solid giallo. Great for the genre. I love it. If you haven't seen it, you definitely should check it out. Thanks for watching. Now please like, comment, share, and subscribe. All that fun stuff. They really help me out. I would appreciate it. And I'll see you here next week, where I'm even continuing nailing some more giallo films. Take care, stay safe, and be good to each other. I am your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete. Remember, with great kills, there must also come great nails.